Greetings, it is I, Countess Naravan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue my discussion on the EARTHDAWN Roleplaying game system. When we last left off, we began diving into combat with the basic order of your combat. Well, we only talked about a couple steps there, the declaring your actions and rolling your initiative. Let's finish up with the other two steps when it comes to combat, the basic steps. After that, you resolve your actions. This is where you truly choose how your whatever action it is going to get resolved. You choose the talents, the skills, or the spells that you wish to use. This is traditionally going to involve some kind of test, and then it's going to have some kind of resolution where you find out the effects of the spell, the effects of the damage that you're dealing. You're going to make all the appropriate tests during this time. Now the fact is, you also will declare whether you're going to be using karma at this point in time. The initiative we talked about last time, you're going to assemble it from descending order from top to bottom, and you're going to resolve it from the highest initiative to the lowest initiative. If you want to change whatever action you declared earlier on at this point in time, you can, but any difficulty to tests you make are increased by 2. So that declaration I had at the beginning of the turn, I don't necessarily need to follow through with that. I can change my action. It just becomes more difficult for whatever action I'm changing it to. See the little balance there? So that means I'm still not 100% committed to that first action. I will get an advantage if I don't change my idea, but if someone else that has a higher initiative should do something to change the situation that action isn't helpful, I can still change it. Now, the final step, of course, is to see if battle continues. After the entire round has gone, after everyone has resolved all their actions, has made all their appropriate tests, has seen what the results are, then we look to see if anyone wants to continue the battle. If there's actually one person, one creature within this area, in this combat, that wants to continue it, combat continues. Because they're driving combat continues, and you start a new combat round from declaring actions, initiative, etc. We start over again. Now, during combat, your character will use several different types of actions over the course of their turns that they're going to use to, of course, do everything they need to do. The types of actions are, of course, the ones that require your utmost attention, your standard actions, which you get one of on your turn. You get any number of simple actions within reason. We'll talk about simple actions. You could possibly sustain an action over multiple turns. This means using my standard action over a course of 1 or more turns, 2 or more turns, in which then I'm sustaining it over that time. And of course you do get free actions, which you're able to use on another player's turn. But these free actions themselves will have triggering moments, things that tell you when you can use them, and that's the only point in time where you can use these free actions, if something should occur that allows you to use them on the opponent's turn. Then go ahead, you're free to use it. So character cannot move more than their movement rate during a turn, and give their full concentration to one type of action that they are doing, which is called a standard action. This is an action that requires intense concentration in comparison to many of the other things you're going to do. You're going to have to focus on this action. Now, this action more often than not will require some form of test associated with it. It isn't necessary that it's going to have a test. There are some standard actions that don't require tests. Just most of them will. This does not interfere with your ability to make simple or free actions that might rely upon this standard action you're doing, or might be linked directly to it. You could still do these. If you have an ability or some kind of talent, skill, or spell that requires a simple or a free action that specifically lists another test that you're going to need, and when you look at that test, which is required for this simple action or free action, and that itself requires a standard action, then you're going to actually have to make that standard action in order to make this simple action or this free action. You're going to have to make that test in order to qualify for use. Now, many skills and talents require a standard action. They will list under their information if they do require a standard action in order to use them. If one of these things that requires a standard action, you're only going to be using it during your combat turn and only making one, because you can only do one standard action during your turn. It's going to require some kind of test which is going to tell you if you succeed or fail. And that's the majority of these skills or talents. Require the test, tell you if you succeed or fail. Now, not all actions can be completed in a single combat turns. This is where sustained actions come into play. A sustained action means that I, as the player, am using my standard action over the course of multiple turns in order to complete an action. The amount of time is going to be something that's actually determined by your game master. This could be anywhere from a few rounds to even weeks of sustained use that is needed to complete whatever action it is. It's going to be reasonable to be whatever action or test you're trying to succeed at, and your, of course, game master is going to be the one determining this. Some of these actions are covered by the rules on how long they actually should be around, but there are others that aren't covered at all, and then it is going to be completely up to your GM to just figure out what's reasonable. It's always going to be reasonable amount of time for whatever action you're attempting to sustain over a period of time. It is possible to speed up a sustained action. Effectively, a game master may allow a person to make a test at the end of every round they're attempting to sustain it. This test effectively reduces the amount of time until they make the final test in order to succeed at it. So it's a way of possibly speeding things up, but the failure on that one doesn't overall affect the ability usually to continue to sustain it. It's a matter of success on that level too at that point in time. The attempts to force a sustained test to be faster. Now, apart from the standard action, your player can undertake a variety of simple actions over the course of their turn. The entire list of simple actions is vast, and most talents or skills that do require a simple action will list it under them rather than a standard, and most of the time these skills, talents, actions are not going to require any kind of dice test. Most of the time you just do them. Now, the fact is that there technically is no limit on the number of simple actions a character can do over the course of the turn. But a game master should keep an eye out on how many a person is trying to do and limit it appropriately. This is still 6 seconds, so there is a limited reasonable amount of things you can do over the course of 6 seconds that exceeding it gets to be a little crazy and doesn't make sense. If you have certain things that you feel like you could do together and certain things that are simple actions that over the course of those 6 actions you can't do together, again, this is GM going in there and saying, that's reasonable, that's crazy, you can't do that. Now, you can move up to your movement rate as a simple action on your turn. This is the only time you can take this simple action. You cannot repeat it. Though, if you wish to make more distance, you can use the run action. You can use the running combat action, which I will talk about later. It is important to note that your environment around you may limit your movement rate. Certain environments may slow you down, might make you faster. Traditionally, slowing you down is what it's going to do. Faster's rare. Faster is really rare. Most of the time, it's just, it will slow you down to be in this environment, makes your movement less. So, that's it for today. I introduced you to actions. Well, first off, I did finish talking about the basic structure of the turn you're going to take, just with using your actions and repeating the turn, before really diving into actions. With actions, we managed to cover 3 out of all the types of actions you're going to be doing. Well, technically 4. We talked about, of course, the standard action. Your be-all, do-all, it's the action you're going to be taking one of a turn. It's what you're more likely going to have your dice test with. It's the big type of action you're going to be doing. I talked about sustained actions, which of course are just standard actions over the course of multiple turns. Then I talked about simple actions, which are small little actions you can do, which there isn't really a limit to how many you can do. Unless your game master says there's a limit, because you're being crazy and doing too many over the course of your turn. Because there is reasonable limits over the course of 6 seconds about what you can do completely and utterly. And the book does list some suggestions of simple actions your players can do. Just give some suggestions to give you an idea of a few of the ones your players might be doing over the course of their turns. In the next episode, we're going to handle free actions, And then we're going to move into talking about resolving actions. Because we did talk about that when we were talking about the basic structure of turns, that you have to resolve all these actions. And it's important to discuss the general rules of resolution for these actions. Just how things work on a general term. But if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. It's just for the channel, the Empire, the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, you can always check out my Patreon. It is linked in the description below. I have some great rewards there, and your support does help to improve and make the channel better. But regardless, until the next time, I bid you farewell.